nerves and you rattle my brain. Your kind of loving drives a man insane. You broke my will, what a thrill. Goodness gracious, great balls of fire. I laughed at love cause I thought it was funny. You came along and moved me, honey. You broke my mind, your love is fine. Goodness gracious, great balls of fire. Well, kiss me, baby. Woo, feels good. Hold me, baby. Well, like a loving like a lover should. You're fine, you're kind. Got to tell this world that you're mine. I chew my nails and I twiddle my thumbs. It feels nervous, but it sure is fun. Come on, baby, you drive me crazy. Goodness gracious, great balls of fire. That is Jerry Lee Lewis's Great Balls of Fire. You can hear Jerry Lee Lewis sing it much better, but I am playing it for you today because it is time to get you inspired for your Unit 3 listening lists. And I wanted to point out a couple of things to you that could be of great benefit to you, especially if you've been following the lectures very carefully on the subject of AABA form. So while I catch my breath here a little bit, just think for a second about what you've learned in Unit 2. And in Unit 2, we asked you to speak kind of in broad brushstrokes about contrasts between phrases. Many of your assignments asked you to think about how music changes or repeats and stays the same. And when you analyzed a Tin Pan Alley tune or an arrangement of a swing tune, you found by and large that many of them either fell into a kind of a 4-part form with 32 bars, where there were kind of 8 bars in each phrase. And you might not have counted the measures, but you definitely feel that sense of 4, of a pair and then another pair, with some contrast built in. Or you felt it was a blues form, and you might have counted along the way I've instructed you in lectures to understand how blues forms work. A lot of the music in rock and roll is going to sound a lot like the blues, and just like the song I played right here, it's going to have some elements of blues in it. I happened to choose a blues shuffle in the way I accompanied myself. After the second time, if you just sort of follow this phrase through, you'll notice that Jerry Lee Lewis sings a melody at the beginning that's repeated. That's just the first phrase, but that phrase is repeated with the full band comes in for the second version of that phrase. And you might have noticed that I chose a blues shuffle. It's a fast blues shuffle to accompany myself in that particular form. Actually, Jerry Lee Lewis usually didn't use a blues shuffle. He usually did a boogie bass line, which is also pretty common in blues forms. So in swing and in the jump blues and in music of folks like Louis Jordan and Big Joe Turner, you get either a shuffle or a boogie bass line. That repeated bass line, it goes along a lot with the 12-bar blues. So what I want you to do is I want you to notice that in rock and roll, sometimes you get those blues-like features even though there's not a 12-bar blues involved. So in this case, if you count the beats, you'll notice that it sounds a little bit bluesy, but he sings, I laughed at love cause I thought it was funny. You came along and moved me, honey. You changed my mind, your love is fine. Goodness gracious, great balls of fire. And it has the same features to it as the blues. It has this stable tonic. Da 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 da. And it's got a blues note. That's sort of not quite exactly a pitch there. You came along and moved me, honey. I changed my mind. Your love is fine. Goodness gracious, great balls of fire. And if you count through those, you realize it's not actually quite, that it doesn't quite add up to 12, even though it has a blues sound. He's got blues influence singing, and he's definitely got a blues accompaniment in the way his ensembles put it together. So what happens then if we count further? So what I want you to do is I want you to go back to your Unit 2 assignment, your listening list. The things that you listened to, the things that you took notes on, and hopefully you took notes on at least one Tin Pan Alley song or at least one swing arrangement. And if you didn't, then go back to my lecture from my optional sort of hint lecture from 2 weeks ago, where I played Bob Dylan's To Make You Feel My Love, and I played Lonesome Whistle Blow by Hank Williams, and I played a couple of other tunes. And I asked you in that little lecture just to contrast phrases, just to think about what's repeated and what departs, and what
ends up being in contrast and then returns to stay the same later. And we talked a lot about how the end of that B section always has that unstable feeling that it really demands that you return back to that fourth phrase, which is the third A, and then B reaches a point of instability and demands a return to A. Well, this time I want you to actually go back and I want you to listen to those lyrics again, either by listening to my own lecture or to a recording online, and notice that there are 8 bars. I want you to actually count along this time. I didn't ask you to do that before, but I want you to count groups of 4 in order to figure out exactly how long those phrases are. So for example, the melody for the Bob Dylan song is 1, da 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 dum da dum da. I'm tapping groups of 4. 3. Da 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 dum da da 4. 2, 3, 4, 5. Ba da 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 dum da 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 3, 4. 1 to make you feel my love 1. And I'm counting the first beat there. So each time it's like groups of 1, 2, 3, 4. But you saw my hands went up to 8 because there were 8 bars in that phrase. That's all you got to do is just count groups of 4. Sometimes the groups of 4 are going to be a little bit longer, a little bit slower. So I've actually put up on the website, there are 2 pages in Unit 2. They're next to the Unit 2 listening lists, and they're called something corny like Tin Pan Analysis, Tin Pan Analysis, or something like that, where I'm making a joke on Pan Alley analysis. Anyway, there's one page that's devoted just to Cheek, and there are 2 recordings of Cheek to Cheek. There's the Fred Astaire and there's the Louis Armstrong, Ella Fitzgerald on the list. And then there's another page which has about, I think, 6 or 8 other songs analyzed on it. So I want you to go through it, choose at least one of the songs that are listed on those pages, and notice how the form works. If you follow along with Cheek to Cheek, or if you follow along with by Mir Bist Du Schön, you'll see that I've written out exactly where the bars work, which one is the group of 8 bars, and then another group of 8 bars, and another group of 8 bars. And I'd like you to count along in groups of 4 so that you can really keep that beat. But here is the hitch. This is the thing that's remarkable about the rock and roll era. Some of our forms actually combine a 12-bar blues form with an AABA form. And I'm not going to give you any answers here, but let's just play a little bit here from Elvis Presley's All Shook Up. Let's see if I can get the lyrics up here. And I want you to follow along, do a little bit of counting. I'm just going to do one phrase for you. This is not going to give you any answers, but Elvis Presley sings... Bless my soul, what's wrong with me? And if you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Bless my soul, what's wrong with me? I'm itching like a man in a fuzzy tree. My friends say I'm acting as wild as a bug. I'm in love. I'm all shook up. Oh, yeah. And then he goes back. My hands are shaky and my knees are weak. I can't stand to stand on my own 2 feet. Who do you think of when you have such luck? I'm in love. I'm all shook up. Oh, yeah. And if you counted those bars, you know something about whether that's an 8-bar phrase or a 12-bar phrase. And I won't give you the answer here because that's for your listening discussions. But notice that then there's a second kind of a phrase. Well, please don't ask me what's on my mind. I'm a little mixed up, but I'm feeling fine when I'm near that girl that I love the best. My heart beats so that it scares me to death when she touches my hand. What a thrill I got, and so on and so forth. You can do, and notice that that's a boogie woogie bass line. So it suggests the blues tradition. But you might find that there's more than one way to look at that form, and maybe 2 different ways to look at that form simultaneously if you really do the counting. Let's see, what are some other examples here? We could look at Buddy Holly's That'll Be the Day, which is very similar. It's also a blues shuffle. It has these most basic chords. Get a little bit of out-of-tune guitar here, but it doesn't matter. I'm just playing 2 notes. It's the same as if I were to play these notes. And it's a very fast shuffle. If you remember from my lecture describing swing and shuffle rhythms, it's 1, but this is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, with an emphasis on 1, 3, 1, 3, 1. But here we got 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, da, 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 very fast, 3, going, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, da, 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 da. So you can count sort of a 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3. Well, that'll be the day when you say goodbye. Well, that'll be the day when you make me cry. You say you're gonna leave me. You know it's a lie, 'cause that'll be the day when I die. So how many bars was that? See if you can figure out how many bars was that if you're counting 1, 2, 3, 4 like that. And then he sings the same melody basically over again a second time. And it gets back to, well, that'll be the day when I die. And then he plays a second melody that's a little bit different. It's a sense of contrast, which goes, you give me all your loving and your turtle loving, your hugs and kisses and your money too. Well, you know you love me, baby. That tend to tell me, baby, that someday, well, I'll be through. And when you get to this chord, it's that unstable chord that really demands that we go back to, well, that'll be the day. And that movement back is very similar to the end of the B section in Prisoner of Love, where it goes. And it could also just as easily be, I'll be true, is very similar to the end of the B section in Jerry Lee Lewis's Great Balls of Fire, where he sings, got to tell this world that you're mine, 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 mine. And I twiddle my eyes and I twiddle my thumbs. I chew my nails and I twiddle my thumbs. So that's the same sort of thing. You're moving back to Great Balls of Fire, to that great sort of original melody that we wanted to come back to since the very, very beginning. So notice that those structures still exist, even sometimes when the melodies sound like blues. Now, not all of the songs are going to be AABA, but you want to look for B sections that are contrasting like that, and you want to look for whether those B sections have that sense of instability at the end of them, just like they did in Unit 2. And that's the essence of how rock and roll carries forward the tradition of early American song, despite its revolutionary ethos. I look forward to seeing you in office hours tomorrow, and I hope you have a lot of fun writing your listening responses this week. Thanks. Bye-bye.